Do that. So welcome everybody to this webinar today. So we used to do webinars like, sometimes monthly, quarterly at least and stuff. We kind of got out of the practice. So, kind of what we try to do with these is just, share knowledge, share, sometimes it'll be specific to functionality, in SAP, like, say calibrations or maybe non-conformances. Today we really kind of wanted to bring everyone back together and just kind of talk about what we're seeing and hearing. QMS, Carl and I, and the rest of the team, stay very closely, tied to Germany, kind of where the products are going, what we're seeing. Obviously, the themes in the marketplace. We were down at Sapphire in May, and there was two words you learned really quickly was rise and AI. So we're going to talk through a lot of different things that we're hearing and seeing, starting with kind of where's the roadmap at, talking through, S4, um, you know, obviously companies are migrated to S4 already or are planning to migrate. We still have kind of a hodgepodge of different scenarios that we're seeing there, but obviously, and maintenance for ECC is done 12/31/2027, right? So people are moving. So there's a lot of concepts out there called like clean core. You're hearing things about the cloud. You're hearing things about BTP. Like I said, Rise. So we'll talk through all of that. Um, we'll talk through some of the add-on products that SAP's had, continues to have, as well as one called QIM, Quality Issue Management. Talk about its future, kind of the good, the bad, the ugly there. Talk about some of the newer products they've launched, QIR, BRH, Quality Issue Resolution, Batch Release Hub, and then talk a little bit about AI. Obviously, AI is really, really large out there, especially if you follow the stock market and NVIDIA and stuff like that. So we'll kind of go through some of these in detail. We like these to be interactive. If you have questions, please ask. We're a fountain of information, some good, some bad, probably some very useful, some maybe not so useful. So, and we try to have a little bit of fun with these. So feel free to jump in, ask questions if something sparks your interest. So next slide, Carl. Probably go two.
Yep.
Okay, so the first thing that, if you go to the next one too, the first thing with S4 is, whether you're on-prem or you are, going to a cloud offering, the good news is we basically have all of the functionality that we've always had. All right. So all the quality inspection, quality planning, quality notifications, certificates, audit management, etc. It's funny because Carl had reached out to Germany and asked for the latest deck. And there's a huge push to the cloud. SAP, is really trying to get everybody to the cloud, and we'll talk about the reasons and the rationalities there. But whether it's public cloud, private cloud, or still on-prem, we've still got all the great functionality that you've grown to love and use. It all continues to be there, albeit it's just quicker, right? The S4, the HANA database is an in-memory database, right? So it does speed things up tremendously, probably not tremendously, but several of my customers are on S4 and, in the implementations and stuff like that, just doing SE16 queries and things like that. It is much quicker, so that was the driving force behind it, but now, there's other things that have come into play that have really helped us out as well. So let's go to the next slide. And, one of the nice things that comes with S4, you could use it with ECC as well as is the Fiori user interface, right? So now we have apps. There's a Fiori Launchpad that can be used that will launch into true Fiori apps. The Fiori app is a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, a lot easier to use. Carl, you want the thing up?
Sorry.
Sorry. It's albeit the standard out of the box apps that come with S4, still you maybe not be like a lot of the results recording apps. We still find to be a little bit more cumbersome than maybe specifically developed use case apps, which we're kind of doing a lot of as well. But one of the nice things with S4 in 1809 when they first came out with it is they really started with a lot of the analytics apps. I think that was one of the things that we always heard from customers is functionality is really good. what do we need to do from a reporting perspective, and whether that was business warehouse, Power BI, et cetera. Customers were doing and still are supplementing their reporting things, but some of the analytics apps right out of the box are quite nice, and including the use of dashboards, and the dashboards where you can drill into these things, like on the left hand side of the screen. If you're seeing a circle or bar chart, you can click into those things and actually see the transactions or the different objects that are making up those graphs and stuff like that. So, SAP has come out with a lot of the Fiori apps and are continuing to roll those out. So if we go to the next slide, we'll quickly see, and I won't go through all these. We can send this deck out if you're interested, but there is a variety of different Fiori apps are available. And one of the nice things that SAP has also done with this is when you get into the Fiori Launchpad, not only do they have the true Fiori apps, they also have basically tiles that will link to standard transactions. Not everything's covered, like SAP saying the major things have been covered, but there's still a lot of things that you can launch into a standard, GUI, transaction, through, the Fiori Launchpad and still access your data. So a lot of things to choose from. Next slide. Trying not to get too winded on any slide here. So, it's always funny, we used to when we go to Sapphire, we always get asked, where do we, find all this information, or how do we learn about it? So, I mean, I'm a guy, typically the last thing I do is read the instructions, but SAP is putting the roadmaps out here, and kind of where they're planning to go with some of this stuff. So it's available through this roadmap thing. The next slide, Carl, kind of shows you, going through and searching for content, filtering out things to see kind of what's coming up. So
yeah, it's kind of nice. I went in here, and if you click on this link, sap.com/product/roadmaps, and then it will give you the ability to put in a couple of things. So you put in SAP S/4HANA, quality management, and then we'll go to the next slide and show you what it looks like. So I put in S/4HANA, quality planning, quality improvement, and quality inspection, which are choosing things that you can search on here. And then it will build a roadmap, and you can look at the time. So I say earliest to latest, and you can see going back into whatever, and then you can start to see some of the things they've released as it goes through. And then you can download this to Excel. So just wanted to point that out. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, no, perfect. And it's kind of interesting here. SAP's release strategy for on-premise has been once a year. Typically,
Yes.
like in the third or fourth quarter. The cloud is updated quarterly, so they're rolling out new things into the cloud every quarter, and then they would come out with a new release at the basically September, August, September, October timeframe. So they're saying keep
Yeah,
moving out and stuff, but
right
yeah,
about now, yeah, would be the 2024 release. Yeah. So
correct.
on-prem, or I guess they may call that private cloud now, is yearly, somewhere around October, and then cloud is quarterly.
Next slide. Yeah. So, um, some of the products that are also available, just in case you're not, aware, back in, I think it was 2009, SAP developed 3 products that were really geared towards the Food Safety Act, and really compliance is the major driver around this. So, one of the products they came out with was global batch traceability. So global batch traceability is like your MB56 where used, top down, bottom up analysis transaction on steroids. It not only, you know, provides the ability to visualize this and in, instead of just having your list, and you can still put it in list format, but it does give you the ability to make it more visual and from anywhere explode up or down, and bring in information into the system to display, to the users. The other nice thing that it really does is if you have, third party networks and stuff that aren't on SAP, GBT gives you the ability to bring in that information from an external system and repair those broken links. So maybe you have a TPM or something like that. It's going into a black box, and that's not in SAP, right? SAP is using this, their genealogy and their traceability is all based upon material documents. So if you're not performing those transactions in SAP, I've had customers before that lose, visibility after maybe it leaves their distribution center and goes to maybe a 3PL or something like that. So you can rebuild that with GBT. So really kind of a neat, cool tool. It's available. It's been ported into S4, so it is still available to be used. The other tool that one of the other things they came out with on the next slide is management of change. So SAP's always had engineering change management, a really good tool to lock down the data. And there were really two flavors, back in the day, get you sounding old here, but and that was, basically just simple change management where you create a change master and lock down your inspection plans to require the use of a change number, and you could create that change number. The other one was the ECR ECO, okay, engineering change request, engineering change order. And that's been there since the 3.0, days, but not very user friendly. In fact, we've implemented many times quality notifications and use the different tasks in the notifications to drive the change process. So MOC is really geared around that, whether it's a temporary or permanent change. And a change to facility equipment, procedures, et cetera. It's a very configurable tool that's going to allow you to track that change and really route that change through the different approvals and people that it needs to go through, capturing that information along the way. So this is much more like QIM. It's WebDimpro for ABAP that the tool is sort of built in. Very configurable, very easy to use, and depending on the type of change, would enforce different business behaviors and business processes. So a neat tool that is available. It's also been ported over to S4 and still available for use. Next slide, we'll talk about QIM. So quality issue management, if you're not familiar with it, was a tool that SAP built to bridge many of the gaps we had with quality notifications. So notifications, tried and true, been there forever. Really, really good at housing the data, capturing information along in the process. It's just the usability really wasn't there. There were some gaps, like not only the user interface, customers wanted more of a web-based user interface. The ability to have multiple objects on the same notification, right? If instead of, right now, quality notifications for one material, typically one batch, they came out with new functionality that allows for multiple objects to be assigned. But again, it's still at that singular material level, and you might have had multiple shipments with multiple materials on there, multiple materials within a shipment that, that were a problem to your customer that you want to record all as one thing. So QIM did that. It incorporated, the 8D process, 5 Ys, and some nice new features and stuff like that. The next slide is a spoiler alert. This one did not make the cut for whatever case. And if you really kind of want maybe the behind the scenes thing, is QIM was actually set to replace quality notifications. But I think if you look at customers using SAP for non-conformance processes, probably 95, 98% are using quality notifications. And when the thought process was to take that away, many of the customers got angry. So for whatever reason, QIM is not being brought over to S4.
S4.
It can continue to be used with S4 in a side-by-side configuration. So if you are using it, you could continue to run it, even after you go to S4. That's okay. We have actually several customers that are doing that. But if if you're going to S4 and you want it to be, a supportable solution, QIM is not it. Carl will talk in a bit about QIR. One of the things that we're also doing is, our replacement strategy is, go to the next thing. It's going to be a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today. It's going to be going back to leveraging quality notifications. It's using some of the pieces and parts of BTP, which we'll talk about here in a minute. It's using Fiori, and that clean front end, and putting that Fiori typically in a cloud-based application. Because one of the other nice things that we really started doing a lot with QIM because of the usability, was a lot of that B2B collaboration, that we've talked about for years and really never realized. It was really a nice tool. We had several customers actually put it in a cloud environment, a cloud connector, connected securely to the back end without needing people to be on VPNs and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that in some more slides. But, we are working with some customers to, define a replacement strategy, looking at standard offerings, looking at things that we're doing. So there are some options for you. But at the, the kind of the bad news is QIM didn't make the cut, and now we're dealing with that. So, uh,
Yeah, and I'll just point out on this replacement strategy, I think what we've seen with customers too is that you should have both a short-term and a long-term replacement strategy. So as Mike mentioned, QIM is going out of maintenance end of December 2027. So you've got a couple of years. What we've seen is if customers were running QIM on top of their ECC or NetWeaver instance, you can no longer do that when you go to S4. So some people, as they're moving to S4, what they do is they move it off of the ECC instance and move it onto its own NetWeaver instance, and you can run it, as Mike mentioned, side by side. So you could still have S4 talking to QIM in a side-by-side environment, or if you're already doing that with ECC in the side-by-side, you can still do that in S4. But again, you've got that date into the future of December 2027, so you should have a long-term strategy for, maybe if you're running side-by-side, what do you do after that? Do you pay the extra money for extended maintenance, or do you start to move it into this kind of a structure with quality notifications, BTP, Fiori, and cloud? So the next topic, and this is something you've probably heard, a term that you've heard, again, as Mike mentioned when we were at Sapphire, everything we heard was AI, rise with SAP, grow with SAP, and then the other term you kept hearing was clean core. So it has nothing to do with exercise and your core body strength. It has to do with keeping the core of your ERP implementation clean. And in sort of a nutshell, the reason why you do this is because of these three factors, because of the pace of business change that's really speeded up. What we see at customers is just such a fast-paced environment where businesses have to quickly adapt to these changes. New technologies coming out all the time, and then the landscape complexity, meaning your servers, your IT landscape. Because of business change, the new technologies and the landscape, SAP has really pushed this idea of keeping the core of your ERP implementation clean, which means don't customize it, keep it to standard processes, and then you're able to do these things where you move quickly with your business changes, you can implement new technology, and you can simplify your landscapes or have that flexibility in those landscapes. So some of the key points that they point out when they're talking about clean core, things like this, minimalism by keeping it simple, having the modularity of having components that are loosely coupled, being scalable, having it to be where you're able to maintain everything, and that stability and reliability. So that in general, it's saying keep the core of your ERP implementation clean. Don't customize the heck out of it. Don't make it a Z version of SAP. And then the way you can do that is by moving those extensions, enhancements, things like that over to the business technology platform. So their concept is, keep the core of your ERP clean in S4HANA. Of course, they want you to go to S4HANA Cloud. You don't have to. You can go to S4HANA Private Cloud or on-prem, but keep that clean core so that you can do those things like make changes quickly. You can upgrade. If you're on S4HANA Cloud, you're not going to be able to do a lot of those big enhancements, but you still might have the business need to do some of that. So the concept is to move those enhancements and those, say, extra add-ons over into the business technology platform, which is a cloud-based platform. We'll talk about that here in a second. And by doing that and keeping that clean core, you can streamline your operations. You can get a lot of cost savings. You can enhance collaboration and decision making. So you'll hear that concept. I recently took a SAP Learning Hub class on it because in order to keep our certification for QM, they really want everybody to understand what clean core is before they even take the S4, latest version of S4 certification. So just wanted to point a little bit of that out. And as I
I think,
mentioned, yeah, go
Carl,
ahead, Mike.
I think that, for many of our customers that are on here, you're already on SAP. You're not going to get clean core overnight, right? I mean, there's greenfield, bluefield, brownfield, ways to transition into S4. Greenfield, obviously brand new. You go in and start from scratch. brownfield is just a technical upgrade only, which many of our customers do, right? Because of cost and time. And that's the whole clean core concept, is you shouldn't have to have a multi-million-dollar project every year or two, to upgrade the system. They want it to be, speed and be able to be upgraded quickly. But um, it's really more of a foundational thing that, as you start to continue to build out, or you are upgrading and stuff, is eliminating some of those enhancements or moving those enhancements to different places to make those upgrades easier. So it won't happen overnight, but moving forward, that's the kind of the approach where, instead of just going into the user exits, the business add-ins, the enhancement spots, we're going to move all that stuff out of the SAP code and move it to different places and parts, which we'll talk about now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. I think that's a good point. And we're realists too. Like, we've been around for a while, right? I've been doing this 29, 30 years. So we know, it's hard to justify a greenfield S4 implementation. Like, if you could get there, if you're a brand new customer, perfect. That's the way I'd go. But if you've got, 10, 20, 30 years of history in your system, it's hard, right? So I just want to point that out. Like, I'll talk clean core. I think it's a great idea. Is there, return on investment to do that kind of thing and move to a greenfield? In a lot of cases, they're not. So we'll see people doing a technical upgrade. We'll see people striving to get to that, but maybe doing it slowly over time. And one of the ways you can do that is this business technology platform. So if you hear the acronym in SAP, we're going to just talk 3-letter acronyms all day long, right? BTP, QIM, MOC, QIR. But BTP is the business technology platform. It used to be called the SAP Cloud Platform. So it is a cloud-based system that's basically a collection of these SAP services run on the cloud that really helps your own deployment of SAP. It has application development, it has integration, it has data and analytics, it has automation, and then the newest buzzword, AI, right? So one of the things you can do, even if you're still on ECC and you're not on S4, is you can implement business technology platform. You can connect that to your ECC instance or your S4 instance with, I'll show you a little architecture diagram in a bit with it, what's called the SAP Cloud Connector. And then you can start taking advantage of these things, of the application development, build Fiori apps, of the integration with APIs to talk to both SAP and non-SAP system, to do data and analytics, to use some of these new AI business services. So I would encourage everybody, if you haven't looked into BTP, to start looking up what can BTP do for you and your implementation. And it does. It really provides the ability to start simplifying things, moving that to a clean core, to standardize and to scale. One of the quick wins that we see with BTP is moving and doing Fiori apps for people that aren't on S4. So you can start building Fiori apps on BTP, even if you aren't on S4, and connect it to your ECC system. Also, you can get some quick wins by maybe bringing other people's Fiori apps that are already developed, or doing some integration with third parties. One of the things I really like about BTP, and I'll just go to the next slide, is if we use BTP in the cloud, sitting at the middle of this slide, we can start to talk to external partners. So if your company is on the left and your company can interact with BTP, so your users can go in and run Fiori apps and do the integration things, but you can also extend SAP to your suppliers or your customers. So on the right side of this one, you'll see in suppliers, but that could be customers as well. And because BTP is secure on the cloud, you can let those suppliers, in this case, what I'm showing is QMS has developed some Fiori apps that we host on BTP in the cloud to let you do things like have a supplier enter their inspection results, a supplier upload their documentation or their PPAPs or their first articles, a supplier look and see their quality notifications and respond to those. You can put those apps on the cloud in BTP. You can extend those to a supplier where they can log in. They don't need their own user license because BTP isn't licensed by users. It's licensed by kind of like almost like server metrics like size and RAM and storage and all that kind of stuff. And you can see on the bottom of the screen, you've got S4 HANA or you've got ECC with a cloud connector, right? So your on-premise systems could be an ECC system, could be S4 HANA system, could be a non-SAP system. The cloud connector puts that in is the link between that S4 ECC system and BTP. The storage in BTP is HANA Cloud, but you can also, through the Cloud Connector, store back to your ECC or S4 database as well. Okay, so I'll talk about some use cases that we've done. This particular one is suppliers basically entering in their C of A or batch information, seeing their supplier corrective actions and responding to 8Ds, maybe doing PPAP or APQP on the system, seeing supplier scorecards or some of the things that we've seen. And the way we've implemented that in our proof of concepts is on our own BTP system. So what you're seeing on this screen is a BTP system, which is that URL at the top. I'm logged in with my user. And I'll just show you this live just so you can see what it looks like. So if I bring over my other screen here, this is the system. You can see I'm logged in with my username. And then what you're seeing on the background is this is a Fiori Launchpad on top of BTP. So again, I've got actually an ECC6 system, SAP ECC6 system behind the scenes with the Cloud Connector. And I can do something like just look at this Fiori app where I've got a list of quality notifications. So when I click on that, it's calling that Cloud Connector. I'm getting real-time data from my ECC system. And in this case, I'm going to run a work list of quality notifications in a Fiori app. So we've written a simple Fiori app that says, run a work list, kind of like what you would normally see in a transaction like QM10, QM11, QM12, and look at a list of quality notifications. And maybe I want to filter them by outstanding or in process notifications. And then I want to go into a specific notification, and you can see my header data, my item data. I could look at task. I could look at the ability to have a supplier respond with some checkboxes. So that's an example, and I'll show that in a slide here, is, all of these things are Fiori apps on the cloud connected to either an ECC or an S4 in the background that either, in this case, maybe enhance it and let my supplier enter in and see their quality notifications. We've got this one where the supplier can enter their certificate of analysis data, maybe their supplier documentation. Lots of good use cases. We've got one for calibration. We've got one for audit management. Again, lots of different use cases that we can implement in the cloud. Here's another example. This was on a project that we're working on now where we wanted to create a nicer looking Fiori work list. So one of the things that Mike was showing like at the beginning was S4HANA Cloud, S4HANA on-prem or private cloud has Fiori apps, right? There's a list of Fiori apps. For whatever reason, there's not a lot of Fiori apps at all that have to do with quality notifications. And that's one of the most used parts of the system. So here's a Fiori work list that we built for a customer together with a partner that said, let's look at a list of your notifications and let's put some metrics right into the work list so that we can have live, by status, by type, how many were created, what the age are, and then drill down into those notifications. Or if we want to create a new one, just click this button on the bottom right and create a new one. So lots of possibilities. And I showed our simple proof of concept one where we're just exposing the detail of the, the header, the defects, and the tasks, right? So here's a notification with the defect items that we could expose to the supplier or internal people at your company. Same thing where we could do something very simple, which is just give them some text boxes where they can describe what caused the problem. Has it happened before? What are you doing to resolve it? How can you prevent it in the future? So this is a supplier logging into your seeing their supplier corrective action and just using sort of a text-based response here. And if we wanted to, see it, from a task base, we could also show the task, who it's assigned to with response dates as well. So we can expose all levels of that notification in that BTP app. So moving on from BTP, we wanted to talk through two new products, let's say relatively new within the last 3 years or so that SAP's released. I'll start with QIR, and then I'll let Mike talk to the batch release hub. So what QIR is yet another 3-letter acronym from SAP. It's called Quality Issue Resolution. And what quality issue resolution is let's just say the latest cloud-based quality improvement solution that SAP has. So QIR is similar to what QIM's use cases were, which are quality issues. It was built though, so where Mike mentioned QIM was NetWeaver based and not supported with S4. QIR is purely cloud based, so it's on BTP on the cloud. It is a separate license, so you have to license it separately. It is consumption based, meaning it's not user based. You buy buckets of quality issues. So one quality issue might be a supplier corrective action, a supplier problem solving process. And you can have many people from your company working on it, many people from the supplier, and it counts as one issue. So maybe buy buckets of 100 issues, and that's how it's priced. Okay, but it's on BTP. The main use case that it was built for was the 8D problem solving methodology. So if you're from automotive or another industry that is used in, you'll understand 8D. It's got 8 steps to it, like identify the team, define your immediate corrective actions, et cetera. So all of those scenarios, it's on an 8D. So the way it kind of works is you can create a quality issue manually, or you could launch it from a quality notification. So if in your ERP, ECC, or S4HANA system, you have a notification and you want to launch the problem solving process in QIR, there's an action box you click on. It creates the issue in QIR, and then you and the supplier, or if it's like a customer complaint, customer related, you and the customer can work on those things collaboratively on the cloud. Okay? You can see some of the key possibilities of what's in the solution. So it is a collaborative hub because it's on the cloud. You can use it for issue logging. It is really focused on the problem solving process. So once you have an issue and you want to go through a structured problem solving process like 8D or your own sort of Kappa process, that's what it's used for. So it has the 5 whys methodology. It has Ishikawa diagrams. It has the 8D steps. So it's really a standardized framework to do that. And so here's an example that, like I mentioned, you could have a defect that you found maybe during your incoming goods inspection and process inspection, whatever, like in SAP, this is the ECC or ERP side, you could create a quality notification. And then in that action box, you could say, okay, this is supplier related, so request an 8D from a supplier. I click on that action box. It creates the quality issue in the cloud. So now we're in BTP in this right side of the diagram. The supplier will get a notification via email that an issue has been created. They can click on it, they can look at the issue, accept it, and then they can start processing in this collaborative platform. There'll be an 8D, and you'll go through the 8D steps, you'll identify the team, you'll go through all the steps all the way to celebrating. Okay, so it's got the root cause, initiate the corrective actions, defining preventive actions, and the whole 8D process in it. So that's sort of what it looks like. Record the issue, manage the issue, create your problem solving process, and manage that problem solving process. You can see some of those features there with both SAP quality notifications feeding it, or even third-party systems back and forth. But this is sort of the life cycle, let's call it, where you capture it, you assess and assign that issue, you do your problem solving process, you come to a resolution. Now you're learning and adapting and from that issue and closing it. I will mention, just as I mentioned, this is a separate license. One of the things about quality issue resolution, up until this month, it was available as a standalone cloud-based application that you could license. Starting in November, actually even starting in this month, the only way you can do it as a standalone is by getting an exception from SAP up until the end of November. So if you're interested in quality issue resolution, there is sort of a time constraint. October, November, you can get an exception. QMS can get that for you if you email us and you really want to get this. We've got a great relationship with product management in Germany on this, and I can get you an exception to get it standalone. Starting December 1st, QIR is going to become part of SAP DM, Digital Manufacturing. And the only way you can get it starting December 1st is if you are a SAP Digital Manufacturing customer, which is a separate license, and let's just say a lot larger cost than what you would get. So I don't really want to comment on why or how, but that's just the way it's going. QIR is going to become sort of a sub process under digital manufacturing. I understand that, there's some good parts there, but some people would like to use a standalone. So if you really don't see yourself going to digital manufacturing, which is a replacement for that, it's basically an MES, manufacturing execution system, that replaces SAP ME and MII, and you want it as a standalone, make sure and email sap@qmsinc.com, C Dunlap, or mkrug@qmsinc.com, and we can get you an exception. So I'm going to let Mike talk about the next one, which is the SAP Batch Release Hub, another great standalone app.
Yeah, so this is another product that SAP has launched. It's relatively new, and it actually caught me by surprise. I learned about it because of my current customer. But basically what it is it's again another cloud-based tool, sold as a SaaS, software as a service, that allows you to basically do your usage decisions, but bring in a lot more information. In fact, I did an implementation one time for a glass bottle manufacturer, and we kind of just implemented, we weren't actually capturing the analytical measurements. It was more of like a QA checklist. Was this okay? Were they able to do this? Were there any problems, et cetera? And all of a sudden, I think a couple weeks after go live, we heard it was taking, a half day or a day to release, the glass bottles to, be distributed. And we're kind of curious as to why. And it wasn't that, you know, SAP was taking them that long. They were having to go to their manufacturing system to make sure there weren't any problems. They were having to go to the regulatory system to do this, or going, supply to do something, look at something differently. So really the whole thought process about this is it's just a central tool. And regardless of whether your regulatory, manufacturing, quality or anything else is in SAP or not, this acts as a hub and brings everything into a single place, right? So it's really trying to provide, kind of visibility across the enterprise, and bring all the information that you need in to release the product to market. And this is really designed around, GXP companies and, really around life sciences, but it could be used by other, food, chemical, more of a regulatory, uh, com companies that need to, make sure they dot the I's and cross the T's a bit more. So that can be used for that. Next slide.
Yeah, I mean, just comment a little bit too, like where I saw this is both, like Mike said, it really in regulatory environments. Like, so if you have an electronic batch record, like you're releasing a batch of a pharmaceutical or a biopharma product, or even a medical device, like a device history record, this is a process and quality where you have to have all these components to release that device or release that batch. And this is a great tool for doing that.
Yeah, the other
Yeah.
thing that it does really well too is that, and I see, Todd and Arkashaw on here. I have one customer that has an enhancement that does a genealogy check, at time of QA 11. And that's really big too. You'll see that in the next slide, here in a second. But this supports commercial, releasing commercial batches as well as clinical trial batches. Basically, you can bring in the different types of information based upon, different types of batches, et cetera. If we go down to the next slide, which talks about really the core capabilities, where I was getting at is this genealogy check. They're calling it here in the middle of the screen a component check. But obviously, if you're releasing a product to market, in my GXP environments, you're really needing to make sure that everything that went into that is still good, right? That there isn't a problem maybe with one of the raw material batches, that's being recalled or something like that. Your supplier hasn't called you up and say, hey, we have an issue. You're really looking at it holistically, right? Through all the different pieces and parts, everything from, your packaging materials, your artwork materials, making sure you're on the latest, greatest things, to, looking at all the different manufacturing data. So it's bringing in, annual, product quality reviews, artworks, genealogies, batch record things, certificate checks, all these different pieces and parts can be brought in, to make, releasing the batch not only quicker and easier because you're bringing all that information into a central place, but also ensures more of compliance because nothing's being missed, right? So the compliance goes way up if you're doing this and looking at all that. So really kind of a cool new tool. There's been a high rate of adoption in the pharmaceutical area. There's lots of companies that are actually transitioning to this tool. So you are in that regulatory space, pharma, medical device, maybe even food, possibly, chemical, this is probably a tool that's worth looking at. And SAP's investing heavily in this tool right now. So definitely a cool thing to look at.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. And I think what we used to see with this was a lot of our customers would build something custom around the batchware use list or a custom batch release or custom device release project process. This gives you the ability to do this in a standardized system going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too. A lot of our customers will talk about electronic batch records, EBR or EDHR,
Yeah.
electronic device history record. And again, the challenge of that hasn't been really, capturing everything electronically. It's all those different pieces and parts are in different systems, right? You're never going to
Yes.
probably SAP isn't an end all be all for everything. There's always going to be complementary, solutions that are part of the landscape, right? And again, with these new cloud products and stuff like that, and that's kind of also been SAP's message over the years is you don't have to do everything here, but we want to know about it. Bring some of that data back in. The cloud tools are really allowing that, the interconnectivity, across multiple systems. So, last kind of topic we really wanted to talk through, kind of briefly is AI, right? Artificial intelligence, if you're on the new iPhone 16, I just told Carl, he just did it this morning, I think. There is the Apple Intelligence piece. You can go down and you can go download the latest iOS thing, and it's really built more, you know, you know, artificial intelligence into the Apple products and things like that. But every company's on this bandwagon and talking about AI. So kind of what's SAP doing? And it's funny in all the tools, products and stuff like that, there's always these slides. So we go to the next slide, you'll see, where, AI is built into, QIR, right, Carl?
Yeah, so one of the use cases SAP has released in the quality issue resolution project product is the first AI use case is around finding similar problem solving processes and deriving potential actions. So if you think about your defects and non-conformances and where you're going out and you're doing a quality notification or a quality issue and you're going through that methodology to identify what the issues are and come up with the root cause and what the corrective actions are of it. If you start to see, similar issues and reoccurrence of those similar issues, AI could be a great tool to go look through all of those issues in a large database, language model, and look through and say, oh, like we've seen that problem before. How did we solve it last time? What are the potential ways to do that? And to really become more efficient in doing that. So this is one of the first AI things that I've seen, and this was released in, again, QIR because it's cloud. It's got a quarterly release, so I guess that means May of 2024. So 2405 release was when this came out. So it is available now in the QIR product to identify problem solving, derive potential actions. So you can see that a little bit about how it works. To find those similar problem solving processes using AI, it generates this thing called a similarity score. You can see a little bit about that here where it looks through it and it comes up with the different fields to come out with that, and then that can be derived across multiple languages. Again, SAP being a system that has multiple language capabilities, so that's built in. And you can just think through the possibilities. Again, this is a newer application in just the QIR, which is that separately licensed system. So I know a lot of people don't have that yet, but I just wanted to talk through, capabilities. So that's one of them. So problem solving process in QIR. The other one that would be available, and I put the link on this one because I even wasn't really aware of it until I think at Sapphire, when I heard somebody talk about it, was the visual inspection process. And again, I think this is just in the digital manufacturing area, but let's just say you're using SAP digital manufacturing and you're assembling a product and you can implement cameras on that line that are looking through the products that you're making. So a lot of people's lines already have these kind of visual systems, but this is built into SAP now. So it could take a look at this, and you can see in the top left, it's actually through that camera going to identify that there's a missing screw right there, right? And it's going to automatically assign a defect, in this case, left screw missing, and log that as a non-conformance. So again, I wanted to put a live link in there. You can click on this link in there when you get the slides, and it will take you to the Discovery Center in Cloud AI, which also has other AI-based applications in it. And it's got a nice little video that shows how this process works. So this is called visual inspection in AI. And then Mike wanted to just talk about some potential use cases that we've talked to some customers about as well here.
Yeah, I mean, one of our favorite things to do is sit down with the customer over an adult beverage and just kind of brainstorm and stuff, and kind of where can we use this? And this is kind of a couple of my customers I've been talking with and stuff like that. And you think about like the AI, it's funny the transition of all this. I think 5 years ago or so we were talking about big data. We're talking about machine learning, right? This is it's all about now taking all that big data, and crunching it and doing the machine learning and making recommendations. And so you saw that in SAP's last slide, is that AI makes the recommendation. But I actually use my Alexa and Siri to set alarms automatically and stuff like that. So it's basically performing, redundant, mundane tasks and really, making you more efficient, right? So, kind of one of the things we were talking about with one of my customers is, wouldn't it be great if, we could scan in a specification document, we have a PDF of a spec document, and have the system create that inspection plan for us automatically, right? Anytime we're talking about a customer, about a new project, and stuff like that, especially around the quality inspection areas, 50% of that project is data. It's getting the data out of the old system, it's cleaning it up, it's loading it, right? It's creating all the different pieces and parts, the mix, the methods, right? The sampling procedures, sample drawing procedures, all these different things, right? So, wouldn't it be nice, if we had a tool, within SAP to create that for us automatically, or potentially make changes or recommend changes and stuff like that. So, and then we could use that to standardize, the plans and the consistency across the enterprise, right? Spoiler alert, nobody's data is really that clean or that nice. I mean, it's always a huge task, right? So I think this is an area we mentioned this to Germany, is I think this could be a huge win, right? Is eliminating the need to do that, leveraging AI, in the system to kind of do it for us auto magically, use that word. My friends at SAP have used a lot of it as well. So look for that, hopefully coming down the pipe sometimes. If that's interests you, let us know, because we're giddy trying to, kind of go after that one and deal with that. The other thing around, you saw it's in QIR and looking for, structured, similar issues and things like that, is really on the non-conformance side. I did a project, boy, it's been 20, I only know this because my daughter was just born and she's 21 years old now. So this was an automotive company up in the South Bend area, and it was a quality notifications project. They were a certified government, where they had certified suppliers. They're a government facility, and so there wasn't any incoming inspection, right? But they really needed to start to um, understand all of the defects that they're having from their suppliers. They wanted to capture this information. We always say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? So, a lot of times those quality notifications are about capturing that data so we can do a Pareto analysis and look at where should we be focusing our time to kind of, reduce the majority of the problems. And so they did the same thing. Is anytime they found an issue, a defect, we created a really easy, application for them to record those defects. And then the system at the time actually did some thinking of itself and looked at the dollar amount of of those defects and said, okay, if it's less than $50, we're just going to basically create the notification and close it out automatically. If it's more than that, then we're going to leave it open, and we were then able to start running trends and stuff to look at different suppliers. But wouldn't it be great, if we have a problem and we're recording a problem, or the system, Carl showed in digital manufacturing systems indicating a problem, to look at that and look at more of the criteria that's really going to help us, prioritize it and figure out, how important it is or what we need to do. I mean, if this is a problem, a small problem, but it's for our biggest customer, right? I don't want to just close it out. I want to deal with it, right? I want to, depending on, whether the problem could affect, public, health and safety or something like that, right? The workflow or the tasks that need to be assigned could be quite differently than if it's just a simple thing, right? So we could use, AI and machine learning and data that we have to look at complex algorithms to say, based upon these criterias, how do we want to deal with this? Should it be closed out? Do I need to have 13 steps? Do I need to notify, the director of quality for the organization to make sure that they're absolutely aware, or potentially, somebody at the C level, right? Depending on how big of a problem this is. So, not only can the system start to, assign defect codes, that was actually a SAP use case that they did on quality notifications probably 6, 7 years ago, but, use it to assign priorities to the notifications or tasks and things like that, and bucket them differently. So really some cool things that we can do with all the data that we have, from the past, and use really this computing power to, streamline our operations and really, make things simpler.
Yeah, so we've got
With that,
7 minutes left to the hour here. So we always like to leave a little bit of time at the end of
that's
the
unusual for
webinar.
us, Carl. We
Yeah,
must
that's
be we must be using
actually
AI tools today to make ourselves more efficient,
track
because
ourselves.
we usually run 7 to 10 minutes over.
Late. Yeah. So it's a good thing that we've got a few minutes left. I think everybody is on mute, but you should be able to unmute yourself, or if not, just hit me in the chat and I can unmute you if you got any questions, things, questions about what we talked about in the presentation, um, future topics that you want to see. Really just want to leave the last 5 minutes here to leave it open to the audience with either questions or, um, maybe topics you want to see in the next thing. So